To the Project Space Archive panel. We're just going to go down and introduce ourselves. You can start, Anaya.
Hello again for the 95th time during this conference. I'm Anaya Butler from Public Media Institute and Cradle.
All right, I'm Yashi Davalos. I'm the curatorial fellow here. I also am overseeing some of our grant admin. I'm a curator, artist, and writer. And I guess technically still the member of The Front, which is a collective run gallery in New Orleans.
Hi everyone, my name is S.Y. Lim, working at Public Media Institute, but also have 3 different jobs, as I mentioned yesterday. I am managing Thomas Kong's estate in Chicago, mostly archiving his 3,000 to 4,000 pieces of collage works. And I am with Public Media Institute.
All right, hello everyone. I'm Aiden Bettine. I'm with Late Night Copies Press based out of Minneapolis. And that's why I'm here today, but my day job is that I'm an archivist. So I run an all queer trans archive at the University of Minnesota called the Treader Collection in GLBT Studies. Hey, what's up, Treader fans? I love it. We're a very Midwestern queer trans archive.
Hi, I'm Anna Warewine. I'm with Stopgap Projects in Columbia, Missouri.
Hi, I'm Ashley Jonas. I'm with Blue House in Dayton, Ohio.
All right, can we get a warm welcome for all our panelists? All right, we're going to start with the first question, just kind of a through line rule since we have, I think we may have some doubles up here. Is it just one from each org right now? Okay. All right, cool. So we're going to start with the first question. What unique archival challenges do artist-run spaces face compared to larger institutions? And how do these challenges shape your approach to materials and methods in your archival work? We don't have to go in order, just whoever feels compelled to speak first.
I'll say things. Great. I think that the answer to the question aligns with almost everything that we've been talking about today, right? It's really about leaning into communities. It's really about taking resources that we have and leveraging them. So for instance, if I think about larger institutions, they have people that they pay to come and document shows, or they have other monetary ways to sustain archiving. And I think artist-run spaces, a lot of them are temporal, a lot of them are ephemeral. And so for us to maintain an archive is really about just embedding that within the practice. How do they shape our approach to materials and methods? We lean on folks. We have cameras. We also have lens-based friends that have volunteered to help us out, produce videos. How have we been paying for the website for so long? I guess just our pockets? Yeah. So we've been operating for 10 years and we've had a website for all 10 of those years, and we've documented all of the shows. So when we look back at our website, it's like, oh, holy shit, we've actually done a lot of really great and interesting shows. But again, I think that that's just like having it be embedded within our love for artists and wanting to support them and lean on the support that we get from our communities.
I guess I'll chime in from an archivist perspective in particular for this question of like, because artist-run spaces are so ephemeral and sometimes project spaces come and go versus larger arts nonprofits that have such oftentimes staying power in our communities, I think it's really hard to build relationships with literal archives and archivists as somebody moving through more ephemeral projects. But as an archivist, like, I'm telling you all, like every single one of you in this room, go talk to your local archives, whether that's at an institution, whether it's an arts-oriented one or not. Like, give a chat to your local history society. I think one of the hardest things to know, like I'm one person who runs a queer trans archive that technically doesn't have a geographical boundary, which is impossible. But like I can't possibly know every local queer trans art related thing happening in Minneapolis, St. Paul, or even broader Minnesota, and then the Midwest. So like call me, email me, tell me that you're doing something, and I think you'd be surprised. Like I think a lot of our people would assume that we'd want to go for larger institutions or larger projects, get this big prestigious collection from local arts org, insert name, or local artist, insert name, but like the ephemeral stuff is actually like the coolest to collect, the most inspiring for other people. And so I think when I first saw just kind of all the questions, one of my thoughts is like, you also don't have to do it yourself. Like, if we're talking about doing less or doing more with our limited resources, find your local archivist who likes niche art shit. Like, they will help you. They might even host a show for you. They might do an exhibit for you. Like, find those people as collaborators and resources, and also ask them, like, what would you want from me? What could I save? What could I give to you? Which can also clear up storage space, right? Like one of the things that I do in Shredder that I actually inherited is for artists in the community, we're literally storage space. It's your archives. You need to borrow it for a show. You need to grab something for inspiration. You actually went, wait, I don't want the institution, since I'm at the University of Minnesota, to have that. We let artists take it back. Like it's your collection. And so try to find the people that you can build those relationships with.
Do you want to go?
Oh, you can go. No, go ahead.
I studied photography when I was in art school, so I do know how to take photos. But to document 3,000 to 4,000 pieces of artwork is a lot. When Thomas Kong is a Korean immigrant who lived and made work in the Chicago area and Rogers Park specifically. So if you Google Kim's Corner Food, you will probably see a lot of photos of his work. Anyways, none of the materials that he used was archival. It was just like all cardboard and like paper, toilet paper, and like other than plastic bags, I think none of the things were like it's not gonna live forever. We reached out to John Michael Kohler Art Center actually, and they purchased around 3,000 pieces. So I also wanted to ask how they are preserving all these artworks that are not gonna be living forever. And we went up there actually to see how they were documenting Thomas's work and his sculptures. I also invited all my friends to come up there with me, who basically volunteered to help. And we also reached out to other institutions, like School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Like I just texted a photo faculty saying I need to document all these works, and I don't have any equipment that I need. Can I borrow it? And they let me use it actually. So I feel like asking help to institutions also can really help. I don't think they're just gonna straight up say no for no reason. And we know that there are lots of resources, and we can all share that. And I think the community can just come together and work on these things together. Does that make sense? Yeah.
That made a lot of sense. Thank you, SY. Our next question is, what is the importance of archiving failed or incomplete projects in artist-run spaces? And how can these types of projects contribute to a more comprehensive understanding of a space's history? Like, for example, at the Cultural Center, we had an exhibition called Successful Failures, where we essentially documented the whole history of PMI and every single thing that we had ever done wrong that we could have stood to improve upon.
Really quickly, I want to share, when you respond to this question, I'm also curious to know like what specific about the space or the collective that you're affiliated with, whatever initiatives you have, like the regionality of it all, specifically for the people who have project spaces, in documenting things that are temporal or failed or incomplete, there's evidence of something that people will no longer get to interact with again. So please feel free to share like any stories about like specific covenings in your spaces that documentation was really crucial for like regional identity as well. Yeah.
So Nick and I were talking about this question a minute ago, and he was saying that reframing the idea of what failed or incomplete is kind of important in terms of like just thinking about that or answering that question. So I'm not sure if like I even think that anything is necessarily a failure. Is that too big and cheesy to say? But for instance, we had a show that was called what was it? Home is where the art is, and an artist came in and did some interviews with people. It was all audio, asking them what home meant to them, how placemaking or homemaking, and how art was a part of that. We didn't get any of the audio. The artist kind of dropped out of communication with us. The person that was documenting the show itself also just sort of stopped talking to us. And so we had all of this, what we thought was really great archival materials, and then the people just stopped wanting to continue with the project. This is not an answer to a question. This is just an anecdote, basically, I guess, of like how we deal with that kind of stuff. And it's like we have documentation, I think photographic documentation of this project that was ultimately just an empty room. So we have photos of the empty room where this thing happened. But then I guess I would also maybe like follow up the question with talking about like oral histories and how oral archives can also be a part of maybe what we're thinking about failed or incomplete projects where there is nothing tangible, there's nothing visual, but there are the stories that we tell and share.
I think I'm going to take this a slightly different direction. I think I was surprised to be asked on this panel because I didn't know we archived. Actually, it was sort of my feeling. I was like, I didn't know we did that. But I really see, I think now on reflection, that like archiving is about communicating. It's about sharing what you're doing while you're doing it, before you're doing it, or after. I think maybe the failure part resonated in that sometimes like feeling like you messed that up or like you missed something can be like a real barrier where if the archive is incomplete or you drop the ball on something, you forgot to take that photo, it feels like that's the end. We were recently talking about like an exhibition where we were actually having so much fun at the opening that like we didn't take any photos of the show, and so we just sort of like afterwards like it was really great. People came. We had great conversations. You just had to take our word for it. It was sort of the feeling. But we do really take seriously photo documentation. We're really lucky that one of our team members is a professional photographer and a real estate photographer, and that's the skill that he donates. And so I'm going back to question one a little bit. But I also think that's a gift to the artists, especially for those who can't be there to like share that professional documentation. But my favorite archive that we keep that is, maybe that's where the sort of reflecting on, success and failure happens is we keep every poster we make and we hang it in the bathroom like a music venue, and like that's sort of the space that you're always reminded of everything you did, but also like I don't know, what you missed, and the sort of the temporality of that. And I've always imagined that like a visitor to the space, if they use the bathroom, probably gets the like best scope of the project.
I guess I'll chime in and say too, I think like around failed or incomplete, like you can hand someone else those reins and the map on some level in terms of like an archive. Like I think, you know, people think of archives as old dusty things, and ideally and lovingly these questions are not that, which is great. And I think like archives are very living, but they're always thinking about this imagined future of who's this like user down the road, this artist down the road, this person that comes to see what we've done, not just for the sake of like preserving our own legacies of the work that we've created, but I think the ways that artist-run spaces and project spaces, like, I think there's ways where I've seen so many times historically, especially in like queer spaces that have erupted, or like take something like the Iowa City Women's Press that was like beautifully powerful, but ultimately short-lived in terms of like 15 years-ish, which is a long time. But still, I wish they were still here today. For example, as a Midwestern, like lesbian, in the 1980s, they were operating the only woman-owned bindery and press. And that changed a lot of the publication landscape. And I think one of the things that's really hard to trace is all that they did, because they didn't put their name on it. They printed for a lot of they printed for a broad range of lesbian feminist publishers, other book companies, different magazines, and like it's so hard to put together the history of like what is everything they touched that they actually produced in their garage shop, right? Like where did that all go? And I think that was actually a failure to not document all that they were producing and kind of hide, right? Like they printed for Naiad Press, this really famed lesbian press out of Tallahassee, Florida, and like the best trace you can sometimes find is go printed in Iowa City. And I go, well, I know that's the Iowa City Women's Press, but other people aren't going to know that when they're looking in the archives. So like, A, put your name on everything, your project name on everything, but B, also think about the way that like if you save and document maybe what hasn't been successful, what you haven't finished, what's a spark, like other people can come and say, oh, there was another queer-run press in the 1970s and 80s that like did all of this stuff, and they really cared about how-to guides, and that inspires, you know, Late Night Copies Press and a bunch of our like how-to and domestic-oriented publications, specifically around textiles. And so like, although we're not directly engaging their archive in the work that we're making right now, we're like very inspired by the fact that they did this. They were like quote unquote successful in some way and sustaining for a number of years. And that we can see that it had an impact on their community in the Iowa City and Iowa area, let alone this larger kind of lesbian feminist publishing paradigm. So that's like just a different answer of like, we've learned from them and look to their archives even when we can't find, they don't even have their names very well archived in their records in the Iowa Women's Archive, right? Like I don't even know that we could find all the founders if we put everything together. And so put your name on stuff, but also remember that like people can pick up the pieces and the sparks and go, oh, somebody did this and it's not a crazy idea. Like I can do this too, even if that space existed for a year or a few months, like I can have it pop up.
You reminded me, I was listening to Barbara Hammer talking about making a film, and she said, we can't build on a culture if we don't have a history first. So thinking about like clearly having a history and having having the documentation or the objects or the ideas of something that came before. If we don't have that, we can't continue moving forward.
Sorry. All right, so I want to move on to the next question. And the question is, what is your approach to archiving exhibitions plus your additional programming for just documentation purposes versus like publications for project spaces? And how have these resources, how have these processes been resources to your community and greater landscapes? Like a couple of specific examples I'm thinking about are like project-based grants, practice-based grants, publications that might get shared at a book fair, like things where you are able to create like physical multiples of them or find like more radical approaches to archiving. Yeah. Do you want to start, SY?
I just wanted to piggyback off of that, and I guess just say that the Midway Atlas is kind of an example of one of those things, and I guess I specifically want to mention how we kind of thought of the Atlas as being a resource to you all, being kind of this encyclopedia of artists who are professing their projects and their ideas, so that you can, find these connection points. You can look through the atlas and you can see, oh, this person is particularly interested in, let's say, archiving, because that's what we're doing right now. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because it felt like it related very well to the topic at hand. But
Maybe just going off the sort of like the print theme. When we first started, we were really lucky to work with a designer and Riso printer, Connor Frew, who offered to make a unique gallery document for every single show. The pitch was, wouldn't it be nice if you had something that people didn't just spill wine on and throw out afterwards? And we said, yes. And so that was a really beautiful project. It went on for about 2 years. It was a really interesting chance for Connor, who was then an MFA student, to work with all these artists as a designer. And it was something that that feels really special. It's something that lives beyond the exhibition. It was supposed to be a sort of visual representation of the artist's work and the sort of ethos of the show. But sometimes all good things must come to an end. People graduate, people move. We have writing about each show, but we aren't sort of as graphically inclined anymore, and that was something maybe we'll pick up in the future, but it was also maybe one of those things where it was okay to sort of close that chapter and sort of adapt. So an incomplete archive or sort of a shift in approach.
So when Thomas Kong passed away, his store, you've seen it. A lot of people who's coming from Chicago probably know or have heard about this space. The space was just filled with thousands of collages, it was like a bodega where he was selling eggs, cigarettes, and onions and all that stuff. And the entire store was actually just covered, I would say, with collages. And the best way to document that was not photo or a video, actually. And I called my friend who works at a architecture firm because they have these crazy cameras where you can 3D scan the entire store. So that was another form that I used for that. But going back to maybe photo, I guess, I also run a space, which I don't have a space right now, but a gallery space called 062. And we're pretty good at taking documentations of each shows and during programs or whatsoever. And then I feel like a lot of them live online these days. Another thing about photo documenting Thomas's work is we're trying to make a book. So that's why we're really trying to get nice photographs of each works, whether it's really small, tiny or big. I forgot what the question was, but yeah.
I think I'd say in terms of archiving publications specifically that I can think about, I always set aside 3 copies. And I am the worst at grabbing those copies when I run out of ones to trade or sell or do whatever. Oh no, I have an order and this issue's out. Let me go to the archive box and steal it from myself, from the future. So don't do that, number one. I'm notoriously great at that. I did it this week. But I think setting aside copies and putting them somewhere where they're I don't know what safe means to all of us or what that means for paper all the time, but like somewhere that's grabbable, somewhere that's in a box, somewhere that's like not totally humid like your basement or attic is always great, but it's okay. Paper sustains actually way longer than digital things, we're learning in the archives sometimes, unfortunately. But I think too, like, how do you make an archive? We're thinking about this for the workshop for independent publishing, our upcoming space. Like, how do you make the archive actually like activated and accessible? So like, I love the fact that the Late Night Copies archive, part of it, will move out of our home shop where I'm more likely to steal from myself, right, from the future, and go like, I need that right now, and put it in a place where people can access it. Like, what's the point of archiving all this stuff if nobody can see it? And I think about that a lot as an archivist above like 2 warehouse spaces underground by day. What's the point if nobody can use it? Like, preservation is absolutely use and engagement. So how do we also like turn our art spaces and our project spaces into a place where it's like our archive's right here? We're not saving it for later. We're not hiding it. We're not keeping it away from folks. But like, if you want to know more about us as an organization, if you want to, you know, have a sense of the work that we do and publish, like, there's boxes on the shelves, right? And like, archives ostensibly just needs some boxes, maybe in a closet or whatever, right? Like, it doesn't have to be the most complicated, the most perfect, but like, how do you just go, okay, I'm sure there's a run of everything we've printed. It's right here. It's in the shop space. People can browse it, and I'll make it clear this is not the place you should take it away from, since it's the archive, right?
Can I bring up the form of archiving that no one wants to talk about, which is social media? You know, the Instagram, you know, posts are, I think they're important based on where we are. People come to our shows, but it's a local population, so how do we communicate what we do outside? Or every show we still get people who show up and say like, I've never been here before, you know, did you just open? So having a space where we can visually sort of describe what we're doing now, but what we've done in the past. And I think, I have a really mixed relationship with social media, but I think Instagram is a really important tool for how we share and also collect.
I hate social media too. I really do. I don't like, especially if I have to like imagine like uploading 3,000 works of collage up there on an Instagram. No, I hate that. I absolutely hate it. But I feel like a lot of people also saw Thomas's work through Instagram or like website, and like I get emails from like China, like Japan, Taiwan, and all these places. So I don't think I can like ignore it. But also, I just wanted to quickly say, I just read the question again. I think how like documenting like 3,000-4,000 of collage works is important, and like I'm trying to make this info public. I just want people to see what he was actually making and like what the hell he was doing at his store. And it's important because he was an important figure in the AAPI community in Chicago, and he was still underrepresented. And I think it's very important for us who's left right now to like actually highlight his work. So that's, I guess, sharing the works is maybe good for the community.
Can I just add, like, the Internet Archive is one of the best resources, and you should financially support it anytime you can because of all their lawsuits for copyright. But, you know, they run the Wayback Machine as a tool, which I'm sure many of us have used in this room to find some obscure website from whenever, or a PDF we hope still exists. But, like, you can do that crawling of your own social media and website spaces. Like, you don't actually have to keep a perfect copy backed up of your website, for example, beyond the one copy on potentially your server or whatever host you're paying for the server space. Like, type in your own website to the Wayback Machine and tell it to crawl it. Put it in your calendar and tell it to crawl your Instagram account. Like, it's imperfect in some ways. It's never going to be as full or robust as the living, breathing website. But even if you're like, I just, hired a web designer, or my friend who's a graphic designer is going to help out and remake my crappy website or whatever. That's not my skill set. Crawl it, get it where it's at, and then crawl it again when you've updated your website, right? We can like manually push those buttons or put it in your, like Google Calendar or something. Reminder, crawl all of my social media accounts and whatever. Like the tools are there, and that is one of the most beautiful free like digital tools to at least have a trace of like how have all these artist spaces and projects shown up on the internet. So DIY.
One thing, I was having a conversation with someone yesterday. I forgot who that is. I'm sorry. But we were talking about this database, like a website where you put in, which like a lot of the galleries and artists uses actually. You put your artwork and then you have your own portfolio basically. Like you upload all your artwork there. But someone was telling me that actually you have to read the agreement, actually. The copyright of whatever thing, I mean, it can belong to them, so just throwing it out there.
I have a question for the audience. Folks that run spaces, who makes show cards? Do y'all have show cards printed? Sometimes? Just curious about that. Yeah, you said you do posters? Yeah. That's a pretty big part of archiving and also just like our space too. We've been making show cards since we started, and that feels like, I mean, there's like, of course, the conversation about the resources that it takes for printing beyond money, but, you know, also other resources. But that feels pretty important too, is like, and I also think about the show, someone came into the gallery and asked why we do show cards still. And like, there's this book that on longing, that there's a part of it that I think about all the time where the souvenir authenticates an experience. And so when we're out talking with people about the shows that we're going to have, having this card to hand to them as an object that authenticates the experience of us just sharing our space with them, sharing our projects with them. That's maybe not so much a part of archiving, but maybe it is a part of archiving, like memories or making an archive in your brain or something. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right.
Can I just add one more note
yeah, go ahead.
about publication, kind of archiving and even presentation? We'll keep naming Zach Frazier, I think, as a local Astringent Press person that Late Night Copies is very inspired by. But one of the beautiful things they've done is they take a video of each publication and their hands actually physically flipping the pages. And provide those videos. And like, if we know anything about putting books, zines, artist books in an exhibition, for example, when the book becomes an object behind glass and it sucks and you can't page through it, and how much it ruins that experience, right? Like, the PDF file is not the same as the printed zine, right? And so I think that has been one of the most beautiful documentation practices I've seen of archiving, to see the hands of the person who's designed and printed it literally flipping through, and then you have the ability to have still frame shots taken from it, zoom in, pause it, slow it down, put it at the speed you need to actually read the thing. But like, it was a light bulb moment when I first saw that and went, why have we not done that with each of our publications, right? So I think that's a practice I just want to put in this space. Just how long is it? I mean, there's zines and chapbooks, right? So maybe not a 365-page book. That would be an interesting form of media in 5 parts on your memory card, right? But, you know, I mean, some of them are substantial, right? Like, I'd say 40, 60, 80 pages for a, self-published printed zine chapbook type publication. You could do it for Atlas. It would take a long time, right?
All right, thank you. I just wanted to thank you all, our wonderful panelists. We are going to open up the floor for questions now, if you all have any. You can just raise your hand and I'll like run the microphone over to you. Hey.
Thank you. How do you all reckon with this? I guess I feel overwhelmed by the amount of information out there, and whatever, there's that statistic of like the amount of information produced in a day is more than there were in the last 100 years or something insane. Like, what's the point of archiving every moment, or like all of the things that are happening online? Like, I think I sometimes feel overwhelmed by like living life or archiving life. So I'm curious about that.
Something like I really relate to that. I think if I'm like really in the moment and like in like I don't know talking to people, then I'm not. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not taking photographs. It's sort of sometimes I'm afraid I'm like, oh, I was supposed to take photos for social media, and it was if it was a good time, then like that didn't happen. I think we've also had events. I think maybe I'm a little like I run a little oppositional where yeah, maybe not everything does need like maybe you had to be there. I don't know if that's controversial, but maybe you had to be there. And I think that's a sort of maybe how do you toe that line between like trying to like let people imagine that they were there or share that or be like, sorry, you missed it. It was 10 people in a room and it was great.
You've asked my internal existential question as an archivist by day. Um, no, I mean, I think I was absolutely going to say there's things we can choose to forget and curate an archive of like what do we want to be seen, which may or may not include our failures, right? But or incomplete projects. For the other question, but like I think there's, as an archivist, I am continually surprised by like what kind of hits or resonates with other people. And like I've recognized that like in my very specific lane, like young queer trans folks love seeing the most mundane, boring stuff about queer trans people who have lived in a place that is either close to them or familiar to them, right? Like, I have a zine series called Queer Materials that reproduces archival material from throughout the Midwest to show that A, queer people have always been here, but like, B, our stuff is out there, even if you really have to sift through all these archives to find it, and I can do some of that work as an archivist. But like one of my zines is about a lesbian in Davenport, Iowa, who wrote to her word processor in 1997 as she was learning how to use it. And she writes 10 diary form letters that are about her day. They're about her wife, they're about the pelicans on the river, they're about going grocery shopping and hopefully having enough gas. Right? Like it's this really beautiful set of letters that like in an archive is in this woman's papers, Joanne Weldon's her name, and is in a folder randomly of unpublished writings. Like in terms of archival description, there's actually like no way for you to go to that collection and know that that set of letters is sitting there. I found it on accident, and then like a year and a half later was like, that's a set of letters for a zine. But that one, like that specific one, resonates so deeply with people from Iowa, with queer folks who've lived in more small town rural communities, broadly with lesbians. I don't know, like it's awesome to see like, she's not writing earth-shattering things. She's not writing anything, I don't know, anything life-changing. It's just like she existed, she did her thing, she had her wife, she claimed her wife Sharon in the 90s, right, as her wife, and just wrote about her day. And that's awesome. And so I think like, yeah, we can say, oh, it's easy to get very overwhelmed by archiving, and it's easy to think like there's too much out there, but I think like let yourself be surprised by what people want to learn about and see, and how they want to see your spaces reflected in some future, and people we may never meet who end up in our archives. And I also think there's so many people who actually don't document stuff, and like the landscape and abundance of online digital media and new production is not the same as analog stuff you can put in an archive somewhere, in a space somewhere, and make people access. Like digital is actually way harder, and the whole field does not know what we're doing. I will say that transparently. As we figure it out, we have no idea. We can just store terabytes of information for years. But that doesn't mean you can sift through it and access it. So it's actually like created a huge problem on that front. I'll stop there. But like, save your stuff and share it with people. And it's okay if it gets destroyed. Like, don't fret over it, or something happens or it gets damaged, right? Like, that's kind of the beauty of carrying an archive over an amount of time.
I just want to say, like, as I'm hearing folks talk about this and also your question, I'm thinking about like knowing and not knowing and archiving and maybe making the decision to not take that photograph, like, or not make that image, like how that is under the umbrella, I think, of intimacy, of being intimate in the moment, or also being intimate in terms of wanting to give folks opportunities to share, like those mundane, just sort of like being and living in those intimate moments.
I feel like, well, I'm really glad that I'm not taking any photos right now. You probably saw me running around this morning. But this talk is getting archived because why? I guess we all thought that this is important, right? When I need to take 3,000 photographs, I cannot make that decision. I just have to do the whole thing because like the mass is so important. Like he made like 30,000 pieces, I think. So it's so important for me to actually document the whole thing. So I can't really make any decisions about like, yes, I'm gonna do this or I'm not gonna take this work because it is small, So maybe I think it really depends on like what you are documenting, and if there's too much information and if I can't handle it, I just say no. And also, if I can't document the whole thing by myself, I mean, we have Lila taking photographs, we have like someone else taking photographs. So sharing that also really helps. Just tell people that you can't do it, and then someone else might be able to do it.
Hi, thanks guys. So sometimes it's like the prioritizing of stop and document and archive or just keep going. I don't know if other people feel that, of like you kind of have to choose one or the other in like arts work. And so our system is like, let's put it all in a box and put it away because then somebody maybe brilliant will stumble upon it someday and then they'll make the archive. But I'm like hearing more and more from you all that like maybe that is the archive or like a version of it. So thank you, all of you. And then also I guess my question is about this idea of the archivist or the photographer and how there is kind of like a really clear, crediting a photographer feels really simple, right? It's like photo credit, person, right? Where I wonder how you all feel as archivists or having that as part of your practice, like, does that person get lost? Or if they're the ones taking the pictures and they're at all the things and they're in the community, but they're not in them, they're not woven into that history and story. So those are just things that I'm like thinking about.
Number one, I just want to affirm what Carly stated at first is like, y'all don't have to organize your own archives. That's actually my job. In terms of like, if you are going to team up at some point, whether it's literally, oh no, our art space is closing or our org is closing or we're done with this and we're going to see if anybody wants the records, in terms of your kind of local landscape of archival spaces, whether they're institutions or community orgs, like it's actually their job to process it, to actually sort it all, describe it, and they're going to redo it anyways. Is one thing I think a lot of people are sometimes surprised by. There's a lot of like potential donors and folks that I talk to who are like, oh, I have material, but it's not ready yet. And I go, well, what do you mean? And they're like, well, I haven't labeled anything. And I'm like, that's my job. Like I'm just talking to myself going, I'll do that. And so I think like we're talking about the notion of archiving and the archive in this panel, but like it literally can be, I have luckily squirreled away copies of show cards and publications in some random plastic tote that I plan to hand to someone in the future, right? Like, it doesn't have to be, it is neatly organized, everybody can access it, and it makes sense the way, like, going to an archives does. So I think that's a really important point, and I just wanted to, like, underscore that. Archivists are the ones who should help do all the description. And if you it doesn't mean you can't roll up with really well organized things and we won't be kind of like, oh, it'll be a little easier this time or something, right? In terms of pace and speed to get it accessible to people from the nitty gritty. But like, just save stuff in a box and that's enough for us as archivists.
Yeah, I wanted to give a response to that question because I think we all up here have different experiences with archive. I think mine in particular is thinking about like community-based archive or archival manipulation. But I think kind of the answer, like as a through line to a lot of the questions that are getting asked is how archive is used. My first encounter with archive, so I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. There is a bookstore called Four Keeps. It's on Sweet Auburn, so it's in a very historical black part of downtown, dating all the way back to civil rights. And the girl that owns it went to my rival high school. She's like 4 years older than me. We're both from Sandy Springs. But her grandmother is a civil rights activist from Minnesota. But her family has now been like deep in Atlanta civil rights history for like 3 generations. So she has access to like all these first edition copies that are on the wall for purchase. Then there's the reading table with things that are not allowed to leave, old cassettes, but things that are just like very Atlanta. And my second encounter with archive was in New Orleans, where there's just a lot of like institutional, like MFA programs are connected to archives. Someone's dissertational work within the last like 5 years was mostly about like uncovering jewelry that was painted over on Creole women who inherited certain pieces. So I've had a lot of experience as a curator and also as an artist who's like really, really in love with like Toni Gleaton and documenting like Afro-Latina life. But I think a lot about like how through artistic practice, you know, we have people who are printmakers who think of archive that way. But I think just kind of in terms of like what I think I'm excited about in the Midwest and through some of the drifts that we've done as partners at MdW, is just seeing all this ephemera around like things that happened in the Midwest being shared at like book fairs and stuff like that. Because I do think like some people have a more specific focus where they'll get a chance to have that whole tote, and other people are going to walk into a bookstore, and then other people are going to have to back up their dissertational work and their MFAs. So I think a lot of it is really centered around like this idea of like activating the archive or archival manipulation. And so much of what we do gets stuck in the process, but I think the utility around what we do is like how it's shared. Yeah.
We have time for about one more question.
Hi, I'm Claire. Thanks for sharing your experience and knowledge. This is kind of more of a comment based on the last comment, and it's about kind of animating the archive and bringing it to life and making it, I mean, I assume an archivist, the whole logic of what you're trying to do is make it accessible, right? Make it so that people can use it. Am I right? Yeah. And I wanted to highlight someone, Daniel Tucker, who now is in Philadelphia, used to be in Chicago, started an archive about activism and movement work in Chicago, the history of it, and it's called Never the Same. I think Rebecca Zorak also worked on that, and it might be housed, I don't know what its fate was, but they used to have these events that they called unfurlings. And they would, it would be an event where they would open up the archive and go through it together. And it was very, it was good community building, and it was informative and inspiring. So I kind of wanted to highlight that and talk about accessibility of the archive,
Okay. If that was really the last comment, does anyone want to comment on that? Okay.
So is there like any publication that you could recommend in terms of like baseline of archiving? Like we recently redid our like drywall, and the guy was telling me there's like 5 levels to drywall, and I was like, what? And so I was like, where did we start? And he's like, well, you guys are at like level 0.2. And I was like, okay, so how can we fix this? And I think we could only get up to obviously like level 2, I think he said, with the way that we had already procured the walls. I'm saying in terms of, is there any possible like direction or almanac that could be traced for like baseline, like people that are just starting out? Like this is the minimum that you should do, so that if somebody goes back, it's like, oh yeah, this is circa 2023 documentation versus like now we're at this level. Is there something that exists like that, or is that something that could exist like that?
I think that's a great question. There's a lot of resources in individual communities. Like, always look at your local history centers, your local history societies, even your like county libraries, and maybe also your larger academic institutions, as problematic as most of them all are. But like, there are, community archiving is certainly a direction that the field is growing and starting to respect better as someone who's worked in both spaces. And I think there's a lot of workshops coming out of from archival professionals and practitioners. Like, this is where the field, at least the younger, queer, transer, more folks of color, like the more radical part of the field, are like, we need to do this work in our communities and not just for institutions, period, and for prestige as an archive. But like, that means we're all actually developing toolkits and workshops on how to do community archiving. So I don't want to say that there's like one to turn to, and I don't think that there is like, this is the text or the place, but it's like an encouragement to like Google community archiving in your community and see like who's doing it. Are they hosting workshops? Do they have how to do it? Like, I know in Minneapolis, the Hennepin County Library was just just facilitating like a how to build your home archive workshop. And that's something that's like a pretty regular offering that's coming from all these spaces. And then there's also ways that, much like this is getting documented, people are documenting those workshops and putting them up online. Plug for the future writing brain is like, I'm definitely writing a how to conduct oral history, like kind of quick book to have, and this is making me realize how much we do need like a how to archive some basics, even though I think things are out there to find. But like, invest in your local communities, because we're already all here in the Midwest looking for our people. They have resources.
Really quick, because I want to let Nick say whatever he had to say. But I just want to say, like, something I deeply recommend to kind of dance around, like, I say before you start engaging with archival science or like at the institutional level, I think people should be reading more dissertational work, like university press books as well, like of people's academic interaction with archive, because I think that's a great place to start poking holes. Some things are more community-based, and some things in archival realities are inaccessible. So thinking about ways that people are applying like kind of that investigative journalism ethic to anything like epistemology-based, like if you're specifically interested in like house music and how it developed in the Midwest, there are tons of organizations that are interacting with that. But then you can also read at the university press level, like how people are sourcing their material. And so, yeah, that's where I would start.
Should we make a Google group?
Yes. But
PMI loves groups.
we really do.
Ivan keep talking about talking to your community like the whole day. We have so many people in this room. And I guess like doing emails, like it's just gonna be crazy. But have you guys all used Google Group before? No? So it's just like, basically, let's say everyone in this group is like in this one group living in Google. You just like send an email to this group, and then whoever has the answer can
Respond
write you
to
back, which is another form of like resource sharing. Maybe, I guess, if we all want to talk about archiving more, and if, in the Midwest, if we need more resources, I think we can just make a Google group. If anybody's interested in, maybe just write down your email somewhere in the sheet. Do we have any papers here, Amy? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm such a programmer.
All right.
Oh, there's the postcard. Yeah, if
Yeah.
anybody's interested in being in a new Google group, let's just do it.
All right. right. Thank you, SY. Thank you all for attending this panel. Thank you to our lovely panelists. We're going to close this out. But before we go, we are going to have a couple archiving adjacent messages from Brian and Nick.
Sorry, I'm not going to do this after everything, but I wanted to sort of highlight the chaotic archiving practice that we have started with the map, and Brian's going to tell you a little bit more about that. And then also I'm going to just sort of announce for the first time publicly that the one thing we know we're doing for the next couple of years is trying to figure out how to do oral histories and collect oral histories from throughout the Midwest of projects like these from 1975 to 2025. So we have a small grant to try to accommodate the facilitation of that, and we would really love for people to just start thinking about folks from their region right now or from 50 years ago whose stories are less sung and would like to be incorporated into this like too big project to even really try to grasp the scope of, but that the idea is when we gather again in 2 years, we'll have the products of that oral history and archiving initiative that Brandon and Kimmy and Jess, I'm sorry to out y'all, but we're doing this. But in the meantime, the thing you can do right now is add yourself to this map, which is its own archive. So here's Brian, who made the map.
Yeah, all right. So that wildly colorful map is a spatial archive. It remembers artist-run spaces and where they are and what they do and who's in them and how to get there. It all began with the first of the Midway drifts to New Harmony, Indiana, where we all walked through a labyrinth. And this labyrinth became the Midwest. We are all the labyrinth. So how can you, I also want to say this is a tremendously collaborative project. It involves programmers, cartographers, designers, writers, editors, organizers, and it involves you to the extent that you want to use it. So there's 2 ways to use it. The first is when you go to a place, you can, say you go to where places that I've rarely been, like Cleveland or Toledo or wherever it is you're going, in or near the Mississippi and Great Lakes watersheds, you'll be able to look some people up. Find people who you don't know, who you never suspected existed. So you're in that town, you have that gig there, look on the map, check it out, and go to a space. Make a contact and meet somebody who's part of this labyrinth that we're all in. To make that possible for other people, you have to put your space and your doings on the map. And of course, that's not so hard. There's a little way to register on the icon that's on the left. It's that same icon that's always a little person or whatever. And you have it's an open registration. You put in your email and a password, and that's it. And then you have a kind of blog-like thing, and it's the easiest thing in the world. So you can put your space on the map. I guess I could request one thing. Don't drag an image into the, that's the one thing that'll break the archive, the database, everything else. So just use the little buttons to put the images in, that's all I request. But, so then I won't have to fix it, But this has been something tremendously fun. It's really amazing to see all the spaces that are on there. We're hoping that at the end of this event and into the future, there will be more, and that's really what I have to say.
All right, thank you all. If you are staying for the town hall on crowdsourcing, it's gonna be here, so don't leave.
So I think we'll take a 5-minute break and then come back for the next thing that's happening here.